There are just a few hours left in 2020, and sometimes it's important to look back so we can move forward. So with that in mind, we're dedicating 6:30 Central to a year that we'll never forget. From the coronavirus pandemic to Black Lives Matter to the record-breaking hurricane season, CBS's Michael George has a look at the national stories that made headlines this year.
2020 will forever be remembered as the year of the coronavirus. COVID-19 ravaged the United States, killing more than 300,000 nationwide and infecting more than 16 million, pushing hospitals to the brink.
Every day it's the same. COVID patients, people sick, people on ventilators, people dying.
The global health crisis exploded in the New York City area before eventually spreading across the country. Some states implemented mask mandates, while other states resisted.
I'm gonna give you a squirt.
Many schools reopened in the fall with safety measures in place. Others kept classrooms closed, offering virtual instruction.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
2020 saw a renewed focus on racial inequality and police brutality following the killing of George Floyd in May in Minneapolis.
I can't breathe!
Protesters nationwide chanted, "I can't breathe," echoing Floyd's words as he lay pinned under a police officer's knee for more than 8 minutes. Most demonstrations were peaceful, but some escalated into riots and looting. Floyd's death led to calls for justice for other cases, including Breonna Taylor in Kentucky in March and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia in February. The United States experienced a historic hurricane season. There were so many storms, the National Hurricane Center exhausted names and started with the Greek alphabet. Officials blamed climate change for the extreme fire season out west.
I lost 95% of my belongings.
More than 4 million acres burned in California alone, setting a new record. The year began on a tragic note with the shocking death of basketball legend Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others in a helicopter crash. 10 months later, the Lakers emerged from the NBA's protective COVID bubble with its first championship since Bryant was on the team. And the Kansas City Chiefs won their first Super Bowl in 50 years before the virus changed everything. In abbreviated seasons, the LA Dodgers won the World Series and Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup.
Ignition. Liftoff.
2020 blasted into a new era of space travel. SpaceX became the first private company to send 2 NASA astronauts into orbit. Nearly 6 months later, a SpaceX rocket carried a crew to the International Space Station. The astronauts named their capsule Resilience in light of this year's global challenges. Michael George, CBS News.
2 major events dominated politics in 2020, the presidential election and the coronavirus pandemic, and it was hard to separate the two as each impacted the other. CBS's Skylar Henry has more on that.
President-elect Joe Biden celebrated a White House win after 4 days of vote counting.
We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation.
President Trump did not concede the race, insisting the election was stolen.
So many of the states, I won every one of them. Every one of these states.
The coronavirus pandemic weighed heavily during the campaign. A majority of voters who said it was the most important issue chose Mr. Biden.
Controlling the pandemic, delivering better health care, and reviving the economy go hand in hand.
President Trump first responded to the outbreak with reassurances.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
But the virus did not disappear. In mid-March, he announced new recommendations from his coronavirus task force.
Schooling from home when possible. Avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people. Avoid discretionary travel.
Congress passed initial relief packages to help workers and businesses, and the president launched Operation Warp Speed to develop a vaccine, but he faced scrutiny for contradicting his own health advisors.
I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute, and is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside?
In October, he tested positive and checked into Walter Reed Medical Center. The president returned to the White House 3 days later with a message about the virus.
Don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it.
Before the pandemic took hold, President Trump faced an impeachment trial.
Acquitted of the charges.
The Republican Senate majority acquitted him.
This is what the end result is.
Senate Republicans delivered another victory with the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. The feminist icon was the first woman to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol.
Justice did not arrive like a lightning bolt, but rather through dogged persistence.
Washington also mourned Congressman John Lewis, the lion of the civil rights movement. During the height of racial justice protests, President Trump cleared Black Lives Matter Plaza to visit a nearby church.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify.
President-elect Biden pledged to have the most diverse government ever, starting with Kamala Harris. She'll be the first woman and first person of African American and Asian descent to serve as vice president. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Washington.